Hello, my name is Barry O'Carroll from the Europe Direct Information Centre at Blanchardstown Library, and welcome to the next in our series of interviews about education and employment for young people. Now, until now, you've been used to me asking the questions, and this interview is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be the interviewee. And I'm going to talk about the English Language Assistance Scheme. And I'd like to now introduce my colleague and manager of the Europe Direct Centre at Blanchardstown Library, Siobhan Walsh.
Hello, good morning everybody. Barry, can we start off by maybe you telling us just a little bit about the scheme in general?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to give you a little bit of background, there's been some kind of English language or language assistance scheme in Europe existing since 1905. The original one was between the UK, France, Italy and Prussia at the time. So this isn't a new idea. The current scheme is about 50 years old and involves 6 EU countries. So that's 6 other EU countries, should I said, apart from Ireland. So that's Ireland, Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Italy and Spain. So there are opportunities for Irish people to go to any of those 6 EU countries. Basically, you go as an English language assistant. So your role is to assist teachers in a secondary school. And it's to help the students in those schools to see English as a living language. Okay, and it also gives you the opportunity when you go to France or Germany, France in my case, to learn the language of the country you're in.
And as we're talking about the role of the English language assistant, Barry, maybe you just explain a little bit about what you actually did in the school. Were you just assisting the teacher or did you take part in other activities?
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's really up to you as an assistant, I mean, to get involved in the life of the school as well. I mean, you have 12 hours of work to do a week, which doesn't seem like an awful lot. And what you're doing is you're usually going into the classroom with teachers. You're like a living resource for them, okay? And I have to say, I really enjoyed it. I really did. Yeah, sometimes you would take some classes on your own, the very odd time, like to do usually some oral work and just practicing. You'll find that in these countries that young people are really enthusiastic about learning English because they see it everywhere. It's on television, it's in their music, the movies they watch, so they're really quite enthusiastic about it. As I said, it's only 12 hours a week, 16 hours depending on some of the schools, but generally 12. Which means the rest of your time is yours. And you can do with that really what you want. Some people choose to do some study while they're there. Lots of towns run courses and different things. Personally, I just spent my time getting involved in the life of the school, the life of the town. I joined walking clubs. I met plenty of people. And in the school itself, I got involved with a drama group. I went with some class trips up to Paris. We visited the centre where they build all the satellites and space rockets. So really fantastic experience.
And Barry, were you encouraged only to speak English to the students?
Now, when I was with the students, yes. In the classroom, I only spoke English to them. However, once I was outside the classroom with my colleagues, with the teachers in the school and everywhere else, it was 100% French. I was in a smaller town in the southwest of France called Brive-la-Gaillarde. There's not many English speakers there. And that was brilliant for me because it kind of completely threw me in at the deep end. It was kind of a question of sink or swim. And you just, if you go at it with the right attitude, you'll do absolutely fine. The first few weeks are a bit of a struggle as you try to adapt. You're adapting to a new country and also the language. Even if you've got the language already, it can still be a bit of a shock to the system, but it's worth it.
And you're talking about sinking or swimming, Barry. Was there any support there for you? Like, was there any particular person that if, say, there was a problem or you just had a concern about something, was there anybody, designated person that you could go and speak to in France, not in Ireland?
Yeah, well, I have to say, I mean, if you had a particular problem, you could contact the program directors and discuss that with them. Also, shortly after you arrive, you do a course, which is still the case, and I think that course has now been expanded to help you with the transition. And to teach you not just about the role, but about adapting to life in France. So that's one of the first things you do when you get there, which is really useful. And also, I have to say, generally speaking, the English language department of the school will look after you. They see the assistant as a very valuable resource, so they tend to look after the assistants very well, and that was certainly the case with me. I was brought out to people's houses, brought on trips out, and I still have great friends from my time. I will add that was about 20 years ago, a little bit more even, but the scheme is basically the same today.
Okay. And Barry, were there other assistants in the school or in the area that you could be in contact with if you wanted to be?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, at the time, the UK was involved in the scheme, so there would have been a lot of assistance from England and Scotland. That may be a bit different now, but in the school I was in, there was 2 other language assistants from Germany and Mexico. And we got along really well together, and what was lovely is we spoke French together. So we all spoke English, Spanish and German, but when we were together we spoke French, so we actually learned a lot off each other. They're friends I still have to this day. So yeah, absolutely. As for the other English language assistants in the area, personally I made a decision to not spend too much time with other English speakers. And that was because I wanted to make sure, that I got my French up to standard, that I was speaking French all the time. And it is a trap some people can fall into, that they spend their time with other English speakers. So it's just something to be a bit wary of.
Well, that sounds like 2 of the advantages of being an assistant, that you're making friends with people from all over the world, that you're actually, your own grasp of French is increasing. You're understanding more about French cultural life. Were there any other advantages that you saw?
Yeah, absolutely.
In part of the scheme?
Yeah, I mean, the first obvious one is language. I mean, that you've just touched on, but just to give you an idea of the difference it made for me. I mean, I did this between 2nd and 3rd year of university, which is a very common time to do this, because you have to have had done 2 years of college.
2 years of French or 2 years of college?
Well, now, what it says is that it can be in any discipline, but you should have a working knowledge of the language. So if you were particularly strong at French, for example, in school, in secondary school, and you still had a little bit of it, but you were studying something else, you could well be eligible for this scheme. Yeah. Obviously, it's of particular use to people who are studying the language, and having a second language can be such a boost for any career you go into. It's a really big thing. So language skills. I went in 2nd year from absolutely scraping a pass in French, and it's very tough at college, to in 3rd year finishing top of my class. So that
made a huge difference to you then.
That's the difference, and I'll just show you here that's a medal that I still have to this day, that was given to me by the French government for finishing top of my class, by the French Senate, and this is somebody who scraped a pass in 2nd year to top of my class. So that's the difference it made to me for my language skills. And
well, that sounds like a huge advantage.
Absolutely massive. I mean, I can't begin to describe it, because it's confidence as well. When I came back, I was basically fluent. I could talk about anything. I could, it was like speaking English. And by the end of your time there, you start dreaming in the target language. They say actually the big test is, if you can tell a joke in the other language, you've mastered it. That was the big test, I remember. So yeah, for language is the first thing. So that's the obvious one. But you do have to make the effort, and you do have to kind of think, I'm gonna really have a go at this, and it's okay to make mistakes. People will help you. The French will correct you all the time. That's just what they do. They do it to each other, so don't take offence. But it really helped me. So that's the first thing. But there's another side to it as well. Professionally, this looks fantastic on a CV. You know, if you've spent a year of your life or 7 or 8 months of your life in another country, it shows great skills of adaptation and versatility, resilience. You know, and when I did this was at a time just before mobile phones even became a thing. There was no Zoom either. To make a call home, I had to go down to a payphone, down 112 steps, I think, to call home. So, you know, it was tough. It was tough at the beginning, in particular. You know, being far from home in a town that wasn't familiar to you, but you also learned how to be independent. You learned how to manage money for the first time. You know, you make new friends. I found the freedom great. I remember my first week off, and I literally took out a map of France and said, where am I going to go? And I just... With
life skills as well as language skills.
Absolutely.
That you would see as being an advantage.
Hugely. And you know, and you make mistakes. I mean, my first week there, I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never managed money before. I went to buy the basics like toothpaste and toothbrush and shampoo, and I went to, not realising, a fancy chemist and got absolutely fleeced. I spent about 200 francs on about 4 things, and then realised I could get them for a quarter the price in the local supermarket. So little things like that, you know, life experience, you learn. So absolutely, definitely. I mean, the other thing is socially, you meet people. You know, a lot of the staff in the school, like I said, I still am in contact with today. I visited them, they visited me here. I've made great friends. In my case, I met the woman who became my wife, which is, you know, we often talk about that with Erasmus. People meet their partners, and then we have what we call the Erasmus babies. Well, we have the English language assistant babies. So, you know, I'm not saying that'll happen to everyone, but you never know. So, you know, it's a huge thing. The other thing is self-confidence. It gives you a big boost because, you know, it is difficult. You're in a foreign country. Everything's different, not just the language. The way of doing things is different.
And I suspect that, Barry, that's a very useful tool, because if you've never lived anywhere else, you think that everything is done the same way as it's done in Ireland. And then suddenly you go somewhere and you learn that things aren't done the same. I mean, not that it's not wrong, but it's just things are done in a different way. Exactly,
and that's a really important thing to learn, I think. It really is, because it's an old saying, but it opens your mind to see, oh, that's how they do things here. And it could be very simple little things. Even the way the French have conversations at meal times is very different. The French will get into a serious debate and really go at it. And the first time I saw this, I was, oh my God, are they having a row? But they weren't. It was just, that's just how they do it. It's a cultural thing. Everyone's still friends at the end. But it's, you know.
What would you see as a challenge, Barry, particularly for somebody who, I think like yourself, this was the first time that you'd lived abroad?
Yeah. It was the first time I'd lived outside my own home. So, like, some people in college by then have already got some experience of kind of a house share or something like that. I hadn't. This was the first time. So, yeah, that was a challenge. I'll be honest with you, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I loved that freedom. Of course, I missed home and that, but I really enjoyed the freedom. But it is a challenge. You do get homesick. You do kind of feel, especially in those first weeks, oh, who do I turn to? I don't know anybody here. But if you kind of stick at it, get through those first few weeks, you will get to know people, make friends, and you'll have people you can turn to if you need to. It's just those first, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks are the most difficult. But generally speaking, as I said, the schools really look after their assistants because they're so valuable to them.
So, Barry, maybe we just look at some of the practical aspects now. For example, how did you actually choose the area? Did you just say, I want to go to France, and then they said, okay, well, you're going to this school, or were you able to choose a region that you'd like to go to?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because on the form you do actually have the chance to choose. At the time, I think it's the same now, 2 regions that you'd prefer to go to. Now, the most popular regions tend to be in the south for obvious reasons, all the lovely sunshine, and Paris is quite popular as well. In my case, I remember filling out the form and I picked the south like everybody does, and then when I decided to refill it and I left it blank. I actually left it. I said, you know what, let's just see where they send me.
That was very brave.
Yeah, I just said, let's just see what happens here. And they sent me to a town, as I said, called Brive-la-Gaillarde in the southwest of France, a town of about 50,000 people, really pleasant. And I'm so glad I did that. Just went with it. But that might not be for everyone. You might want to choose. One little thing I'd say to be wary of if you do want Paris. I was lucky my school provided accommodation for me, and a lot of schools, in fact the majority will do that. It's very simple, it's a room, but it was absolutely fine. In Paris that can be a bit trickier for schools to do, and life can be a bit more expensive. Now you do get some payment every month. It's about €780 net after tax, so not a huge amount. However, if your accommodation is covered, which it will be in most cases, I mean, there was a canteen in the school I was in, subsidised meals for no more than €1 each, very cheap. So you didn't need an awful lot of money to get by. It was more than enough. To do that. So yeah.
Barry, what was the actual application process like? Was it lengthy? I mean, I had a look at the form there yesterday, and it seems quite daunting.
It can do.
It's in French.
Yeah, it's in French. It is indeed. But generally speaking, if you're in college, your the staff in the college will help you with that. They'll be familiar with the scheme. So in my case, it was Maynooth University. And I had a lecturer there called Eamon O'Kisson, I think, and he helped me with that. In fact, it was he who suggested it to me. And you fill out the form. There's a few little technicalities. You have to do a medical before you go, just with your local GP. And now there's the Garda vetting as well that has to be done, and that's all on the form there. It's all explained how to do it. So once you get that sent off, they will eventually get back to you just with they'll give you the region you're going to be in. They won't give you an exact school yet. And then a little bit later they'll give you the name of the school. Sometimes you might be split between 2 schools that are in the same town. Okay. That can happen sometimes. You might.
And could you be in a primary or a secondary school?
I think in this case it was mainly secondary. Now, the French secondary system is a bit different to us, isn't that we have one secondary school. They split their junior cycle and senior cycles into separate schools, collège and lycée. In my case, they were housed in the same building. I worked mainly with the lycée, the older ones, but did do a little bit with the collège as well. And it was very enjoyable.
And Barry, sorry, just to go back to the application process, approximately how long did it take from start to finish?
Now, just to let people know, the application form for the current scheme is due in on the 4th of March. So there's still time to get that in, and you can go to if you just search for English Language Assistance Scheme, you'll find the first link will come up will be the Irish government link to that. You can download all the forms from there. The process takes a few months. I think it was around by the end of the year before I knew roughly what region I was going to, and in the new year I found out probably around the end of January or so what school I was going to. Then it's up to you to contact the school, which can be a bit daunting the first time, and to start putting arrangements in place. So Barry,
if you had somebody come to you and say, look, I'm thinking about it, I'm not really sure, it feels like it's a bit daunting, is it going to be worth it to my career? What would you say to that person?
I say do it. That expression, feel the fear and do it anyway? Absolutely. I was terrified going through the departure gates at Dublin Airport. I remember it well, because it hit me. That was the moment it hit me. I'm going to this. You know, I'd been to France, but I'd never been to this part. I'd never been there to live. But do it. It's so worth it. And like I said, in terms of your language skills, your CV, as we've said, your social skills, friends, independence, financial, education. It's worth it on so many different levels. So absolutely, just do it. Trust me. And I had friends I've advised to do it, and they've loved it. One is still there to this day. She never came home. That's how much she liked it.
Well, that's really reassuring, Barry. And thank you for being so honest, because I think you've given a picture of both, what the values are, but also what some of the challenges are, because for a lot of people that, like yourself, that is quite a challenge, going from one country to the other, going into work, using a different language than your own mother tongue. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Definitely. And
great descriptions, Barry.
I'll just say one thing on that as well. I always say it's a good thing for one period in your life to be the foreigner, to know what it's like to be the foreigner in another country, and to struggle a bit. And I think it's something we should all do once, because it kind of gives you maybe a little bit more empathy as well towards people coming to Ireland who whether for study, to settle, or anything else, and it can be how daunting it can be.
Well, on those wise words, Barry, I'll say thank you for that, and I hope people have gotten a lot out of this interview. Thank you.
Thank you, Siobhan. Bye-bye.